back
It
some
brings
great memories.
great
doesn't it?
memories. I remember as a child going to the dances and the fiestas, and there really just was, as I mentioned, my dad was such a hard worker that he very rarely took time off to relax or have leisure. I mean, and so that was their fun. That was, they would get dressed
Wow,
up and we
yeah.
would go to the dances, and Daddy and Mom would dance.
Well, it's Monday, so welcome to a Motivational Monday, a conversation with me, David Ibarra, and my very special guest, Rebecca Chavez. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, David. I appreciate the invitation to visit with you today.
Well, I tell you what, I want to go back to your very beginning. Tell us about you, your upbringing, your parents.
Oh, I'd love to, and I'd love to talk about my parents. So I grew up in Riverton, Utah. And my father was a Mexican immigrant from Michoacan, Mexico. But he came in the early part of the 20th century, the 1930s, and began working in Kennecott. And so so he worked at Kennecott for 40 years. My mother's family were from Zacatecas and Aguascalientes, but she was born in the States. They migrated up through Texas. And as the story goes, a new child at each town, appears in the family. And so my mother.
So you were child number.
Oh no,
what town were you?
So this is my mother's family. So this is my mother's family of who I speak. So she was born in Pueblo, Colorado, and they moved from there to Grand Junction. Her father tragically died when she was 8 years old, a railroad accident. He was a railroad worker. Her mother remarried, and then that new fellow took the family to Bingham Canyon.
Wow.
Where my mother, that was her young childhood and her teenagehood, as she grew up in Bingham Canyon. My dad was at Kennecott. So they met, married, lived in Hunter and the Kearns area during the 1940s, and then moved to Riverton in the 1950s. They had squirreled enough money away to buy a farm in Riverton, right along the main drag there on 126 South and 13th West, and 8 acres there. So in 1960s, they started their own farm, sugar beets that were that sold to the UNI company, the plant there in West Jordan. The tomatoes went down to a cannery down in Pleasant Grove. But then those two enterprises were closed and shuttered. And so they moved to growing alfalfa. And so I'm a farm girl, believe it or not.
You were born about the what were they growing?
They were growing sugar beets. There's pictures of me in the sugar beet fields and the tomato fields, and my brothers and my dad, and of course workers that they would hire would work the fields. And
how big a farm was it?
It was only 8 acres. It wasn't large.
It
was a family enterprise. But this kind of sets the stage for me and kind of the underpinnings of how strongly I feel about work and commitment and loyalty and all of these different things that we can talk about. But so I was at 8 years old. We had a produce stand. And so 8 years old, I'm out there. I learned how to count back change at an early age. I knew how to help people pick tomatoes so that they didn't squish them, or open up the corn so it ruined the corn. And so, as a young child, I was out there helping my mom sell the produce as my father and my brothers brought the produce in.
Let me ask you a couple of questions.
Sure.
So your dad was doing this simultaneously
while working at
Kennecott.
Yeah.
He came to the United States in the 30s, 40s?
Early 30s.
Wow. Now, your dad and my dad had to know each other.
I would not be surprised if they did not know each other, because I know your family was Midvale area.
Yeah,
I mean,
Bingham.
and Bingham.
My father worked at Bingham Canyon. He was on the powder gang.
Oh, okay.
But everyone knows Dad, not as Frank.
Right.
They all know him as Mickey Mouse. That's his nickname. Everybody at the mine got a nickname, and Dad's was Mickey Mouse. Hence, why my brother was named Mickey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dad was always a convertible, and always quite the colorful character of Bingham. But there's hardly a person that doesn't know Mickey Mouse.
Unfortunately, all of the generation is gone. My mother was the oldest of 13, and the last of her 13 siblings passed away just within the last year or so.
Is your mother still alive?
My mother is not. No, none of they're all gone. All of the family, all of that generation, our formative generation has since passed away. But yes, so Bingham, as you know, definitely melting pot stew of so many cultures, and people just worked together to get things done. Hardworking people. Daddy worked at Kennecott and on the farm. There wasn't a moment that I never saw him working.
And proud. Always.
Totally.
So my dad, your dad, came from a generation that the more jobs they had, the prouder they were.
Yeah, definitely. And instilled that in all of us.
Right.
Definitely. And so, that was my young childhood growing up in Riverton. I graduated from Bingham High School, just like my siblings and my mother. She was the class of 1938. I was in the class of 1978, graduating from Bingham High. Went to the University of Utah. My undergrad's in broadcast journalism.
Yes, I read that. Yeah. So you were going to be a journalist.
I did. I wanted to be a TV or a radio reporter. Was never able to break into the market here, but I did get a gig working at the Uintah County Herald in Evanston, Wyoming in 1984. So that's how I jumped into that.
On air?
No, actually for a newspaper there. I didn't break into the broadcast. I was on the print side, and I was a photographer reporter for the Uintah County Herald there in Evanston for 1 year, and then came back and then started on this trajectory of doing public affairs and public relations for various nonprofits and I've got 30 years under my belt on that.
Public relations, we hear that term. And I have a firm that represents me. What is it exactly that they do?
Well, for me, it's always about two-way communication. It's not just about you saying, this is who we are and let us tell you about us. It's about hearing who you're communicating with and what their needs are, how you connect with them, finding the messages that resonate with them, but also listening to what they have to say so that you're tailoring whatever your message is to what their needs are, instead of just saying, this is who we are, take us or leave us. Public relations is always about two-way communication, and continually assessing and taking a look at the audience with whom you're communicating to make sure that you're still on target, because needs changed. There are some core needs that an audience might have, but
so you're helping a nonprofit get their initiative in front of whom they want to help, or whom they need help from.
Both.
To help the people.
Definitely both. So for example, when I was working at Centro de la Familia de Utah, they were the Migrant Head Start grantees. So we were communicating with parents and individuals who could help source children to the program and find the children to get them enrolled in our program. But we were also communicating with the federal government because they are the funders of the program to show of the need and who our community was and who the parents were and what we were trying to do to help improve their lives and support their lives and support their children's lives. So that's, again, part of that 2A is you might have a variety of different audiences. Your messages might be, the core message might be the same, but you might be communicating a different component of that message to one audience versus another audience. And really that's what PR is in a nutshell. In a nutshell.
So you're kind of in the helping the underdog.
I try.
Business.
I do. Well, and this, I'm going to go back to my folks for just a minute if I could. So, when we were on the farm where we were doing our thing, we're taking care of our family, but my dad worked at Kennecott. So inevitably, as you know, it's a community. And so you hear of people, so-and-so's got trouble with either some medical condition with a family member, or they've fallen on hard luck for whatever reason, or they're interested in buying a home, but they don't have a down payment.
Right.
And so my parents always were plugged into who needed what, just being a part of the community. They were actively involved at Centro Cívico Mexicano, which is the Mexican Civic Center, and had a lot of friends. A lot of the people that worked at various industries throughout the community, including Kennecott, That was their gathering place. That was where they could find sanctuary.
Is that why you got involved in it?
Yeah.
It brings back some great memories.
Great memories. I remember as a child going to the dances and the fiestas, and there really just was, as I mentioned, my dad was such a hard worker that he very rarely took time off to relax or have leisure. I mean, and so that was their fun. That was, they would get dressed up and we would go to the dances, and Daddy and Mom would dance. And then that's where I connected with my Latino community too. My godparents were there. Other people that were part of their lives were there. But they also, Centro Cívico was kind of a part of another organization called Socio, which was more of a civic organization that helped the community. And that's the role models that I saw. Those are the people that I saw. And my mom and dad always said, you know, we don't just take care of ourselves, we take care of our community. And if you see somebody that needs a helping hand, it's your job to do something about it. So those are the role models.
It is oftentimes when you take a look at the different roles in our life, and I do seminars, as you know, just about all over the country and sometimes outside the country. But it's you know, our lives, to be rich is not money. Certainly money is a part of it. You have to have it in order to be present in the other roles. But family, faith, community, health, and I mean health is harmony within. Those are exactly the characteristics of a Latino family. That's what they care about.
Yep, most definitely. And my parents exemplified that to a T and showed us that this is how you interact with your community. And if you have something, you share, or you find ways to take your abundance and do good to others by having that. Another story I'll tell you really quickly is I remember one time I was probably 4 or 5 years old, very, very, very young. And my mother popped me in the back of our Ford Fairlane, our sea green Ford Fairlane. We drove to another farm, picked up a pregnant migrant worker that was there, and she was very upset, crying. My mom was talking to her in the car. My mom took her to our doctor, our family doctor, because she was obviously having some complications or something with her pregnancy. And when you're 4 years old, you don't know what's going on. But what I do remember is the woman was upset when she got in the car to go with us to the doctor.
Right.
My mother interpreted for her during that clinical visit. And on the way home, they were laughing, they were talking, they were excited, and so that really viscerally imprinted me because I didn't know who that woman was. She wasn't a relative. She wasn't a neighbor necessarily. And in my brain, I'm like, I don't know this person, but Mom helped her. And now look, something good came from my mom helping this person. So it's in my DNA. It's a bit in my DNA.
You know, it used to be that was the characteristics of being American. It was, you know, you hear that phrase, it takes a village. There was pride in if you did something as a little kid and the gas station attendant or the owner saw it, people intervened. If somebody was walking in the streets screaming and yelling, everybody knew something was wrong, and they'd call, and somebody would show up not to listen and find out what's wrong. And we seem to have lost our way a little bit in that area. And if we would talk to each other, we have so many things in common that we don't need to have this big separation that we seem to have, and perhaps it's even widening a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say, just as you mentioned, getting to know other people and people knowing each other. I grew up in that small town of Riverton, and you know, you'd go to the grocery store and the drugstore, the druggist knew, the pharmacist knew who you were, the clerk knew who you were, the gas station attendant, whoever, you know, everybody knew who each other was. And
now we're in
it's so hard. I mean, you just don't have that sense anymore.
Some people don't even know their neighbors,
right?
Let alone, you know, and I don't know. There was a new report I read recently, one of the crises occurring in America, and you wouldn't think of this because it just didn't come to my head, but it's the crisis of loneliness, that we're becoming more lonely as a society. And boy, we got a lot to work to do, but we can get it done. Tell me, more about college, and then
Oh, yeah, certainly.
I definitely want to head towards, when is it you decided to get into politics?
Totally. I'd love to jump into that fairly soon. I, went to the University of Utah, got my degree, my bachelor's degree in communication. And then you heard the road that I went on, kind of went into this world of public relations. At the same time, I was involved and interested in the political world by helping local candidates who were running for office. I worked for a short time with the Utah Public Employees Association, and it was their public relations assistant there. And so I was helping all of our members learn more about how they could advocate on Capitol Hill for issues of their behalf that they cared about, whether it's cost of living increases, pension, health insurance, all those things. And so that is where, so I was in my mid-20s when I was working for the UPEA and kind of got that spark of, ooh, this is really interesting, this political world, and advocating and lobbying and talking to legislators and helping people get elected so that they will listen to things that people have to say as public employees and others, the community, and was helping people run their campaigns and walking door to door and handing out leaflets and all of that, and started to see that the people that were making decisions about the community, if we're truly a representative democracy, the people that are elected don't necessarily look like the people they represent, or they don't have those lived experiences. Maybe it doesn't even need to be look like it, but just having those experiences and understandings. And in my early 30s, I'm like, we need to have more Latinas up there. We need to have more people of color, people that have these lived experiences. And then I was recalling another thing that my mom always used to say to me: if you want to do something about it, don't just sit back. You got to step up and do it.
And we need more moms.
We do need more moms. We do need people with so many different experiences, because you have a certain segment of people up there.
Sometimes when we see the dialogue get negative, I think that we ought to call a timeout and require everyone to bring their mom with
Oh my
them
gosh, yeah.
for a week.
To keep everybody in line, for one thing.
Keep everything more casual in the way we interact with each other.
At what age do you wish you had unlocked the principles that lead to success? Where do you think you'd be today if you had learned them as a child? Yes, Our Kids Can is a program developed at Harvard and tested in San Antonio's school systems, designed to give children of all backgrounds the opportunity to plant the seeds for future success, using learning techniques they understand and enjoy. Through engaging animated stories, fun sing-along songs, and interactive games, Yes, Our Kids Can teaches your child the empowering, success-driven principles needed to reach their full potential. Don't miss this opportunity to give your children the future they deserve. Yes, Our Kids Can is available now on the Apple App Store and Google Play. Sign up today and help make your child's dreams a reality.
That's where my interest in politics was piqued, was helping others run for office, being involved as an advocate, whether I was working for the UPEA or I worked for a while for the Museum of Natural History. So I was helping them in terms of issues related to antiquities in the state, and then Centro. So I thought, I want to do this, and I wanted to do it at the legislative level. I admire people.
So somebody comes up, or you decide, and tell us about how you decided and when you decided and the process of running and the experience.
So I mentioned, my mid-30s, I'm thinking, this is something I want to do. Now, how do I go about it? So I had been involved with the Democratic Party for a number of years as a volunteer. I reached out to, then the party chair was David Jones. You know David.
Oh, sure.
So Dave was the party chair, and he was also the minority leader of the House of Representatives at the time. And I said, this is something I want to do someday. I don't feel like I can do it right now because my kids were young then. And I admire people that do that with young children, but that didn't work for us. We wanted to get our kids to a certain age before I pursued my political career. And he said, you need to get involved with the party and have an understanding of those workings, make sure the delegates and others get to know who you are, that you deliver on things you say that you're going to do, that you're a worker. And get involved in the community at large. And so I subsequently became involved serving on different nonprofit boards and working at Centro. And I did that for the next 10 years. And then the opportunity arose in the mid-2000s, 2007, where former Mayor Ralph Becker decided that he was going to run for mayor. He was then the representative for House District 24. And he said, I'm going to run for mayor. And I said, okay, I think this is my opportunity.
Interesting.
I think that's my opportunity.
His last legislative session, he had said that he wasn't going to campaign. And he really didn't, but he did come over here to see me. And I sat down and he presented to me. And frankly, Ralph is not a great communicator. He's a bit just not very animated about what he believes. But I was sitting there listening, and I was a big supporter of Rocky Anderson. And I loved the way that Rocky had helped with the Temple Square. It helped with ensuring that we didn't have a mall replace a mall in our downtown. And even the LDS Church tell me they loved Rocky. While some people think he was disruptive, they said we would have made a $3 billion air. Light rail and things of that. But Rocky had a way of communicating that sometimes was just, a little direct. And then I was watching Ralph, and he was listening to him, and I thought to myself, very smart guy, not a great communicator, but he can get better, and you don't have to be the best communicator to be an effective leader. Publicly, you have to be a good communicator, certainly one-on-one. And anyway, I decided right then, I said, I'm in. I'm gonna give you a full 7,000 it was back then, and I have no idea why. And I got so much criticism from people saying, how could you? And I said, well, because we're going to win.
Yeah. Well, there's that.
And then you take his place.
Yeah, and then I took his place in the House.
Wow.
And served,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I took his place in the House and then served in the House of Representatives for 10 years. And it was,
I knew that.
It was a journey. It was a heck of a journey.
And you became the exact position that one Dave Jones held. Didn't you have his
I ran for leader. He was leader, and I did run for leader, but I served as whip. So second in command, or as I often like to say, den mother of the caucus. So it's like you talked about moms earlier, and what different kinds of skill sets and tactics that we use in terms of convening and supporting and moving agendas forward. And so as whip, it was my responsibility to make sure that our team had what they needed if they were running into challenges, to intervene on their behalf or figure out ways where they could succeed.
You had an unusual reputation in that with a largely, not largely, it was a Republican-controlled legislature, you had a reputation of being articulate, could talk about subject, and was well liked.
Well, thank you.
And could talk on both sides. Yeah. It's interesting when you get to talking about the problem. A problem's not a Democrat or a Republican. Nope. It's just simply a problem, and you problem solve or you don't. Yep. And you're not a pointer. You're a fixer.
Yeah, I'm a strategist. I would like to say that my strength is in strategy. Details sometimes bore me. Sometimes they challenge me. And I always surround my people who can help me with details. Good. That's the whole thing. If you have challenges in a certain area of expertise,
talent team.
You get your people around you and you hand it off, and you find the right people to hand it off to, and then you do and I'm a 30,000 foot level person, so strategist.
And have enough common sense that if you bring someone in and it's their specialty, know when to lead and know when to follow.
Definitely.
And not every leader knows that.
Yeah, it's true. That's true.
So you serve in the legislature, you get out. Yeah. We skip one little thing in your history. I want to know about Houck.
Oh my gosh, yes. So yes, of course. Celebrating 40 years this year. I know my husband and I have been married for 40 years, and he grew up as a young child in California.
And Martin, right?
Martin Houck is my husband, and he grew up in Fresno, California, Clovis, actually, which is near Fresno, California, and Yeah, we met at the university, connected as two farm kids because Clovis was a farming community,
Right.
and his father owned a much larger ranch than the 8 acres that we owned here in Riverton, but kind of connected with that farm kid
Right.
background. And as I said, just have been together, and he is,
45 years.
40.
40.
We've known each other 45, but we've been married 40. And
I don't think I've been married 40 years if I added them all up.
Yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and he owns his own business. He income property management is what he does, and owns a number of properties throughout the community around the county. And but again, his family was from Fresno, and then I understand that you knew his cousin David really well. That you were roommates. And so it's just so interesting when we talk about a small world. That connection really blew me away when I found out that you knew David so well.
Well, David, not only did I know him well, and we were roommates, we got assigned as assistant managers at the same store in San Mateo, California. Was our first assignment with Marriott. And David and I served as the assistant managers to a manager property. I can't remember his name. David went on to have a great career in Farrell's, as did I. Yep. And then later, his family owned the Standard Rent-A-Car agencies, and Mom was quite a strong woman, and she was her business. And when Enterprise wanted to buy him, she said no, and they said that they would put her out of business, and that was the challenge, and she absolutely sent them packing to the point they came back and wrote a big check. Now, David was my very first client in my consulting business.
Wow.
He came out and worked with me when I was still general manager of Henry Day for one full week, learning the automobile business, because as they got out of the rent-a-car business, they bought a Mitsubishi dealership and then later a Chrysler store. And he serve him to this day. He's still a client of mine to this day.
And he's a great guy.
And I'll never forget, he came up to talk to me about a few things, and we were having a private dinner, and I said, now, why are you here in Salt Lake City? He says, well, my cousin's getting married. And it was,
oh my gosh, so that was 40 years ago. Oh my gosh, look at that. Oh, talk about full circle.
It is a full circle. So tell me, what's next?
Oh boy. There's one thing that I've appreciated throughout my whole life, David, and that is not to make assumptions about opportunity. Sometimes people say, this is the trajectory that I'm going to take, and I am only going to take this path if it leads me in this direction. And I've never been that way. I had ideas about what I wanted to do, but I always encourage other folks, young folks, people that are moving along in their career path, to look for opportunity, to embrace serendipity. Things will fall in front of you that you're like, now why is this here? What can I do with that? Grab it, try it. It's better to try something and then say, that wasn't for me, and then move on. So I am currently, I've taken my experiences both in the nonprofit public affairs world as well as my experience on the Hill, and have started my own consulting firm, Aspira Public Affairs. And I act as a thought partner to individuals that are either trying to navigate the legislative process or to enter into community to try to engage with individuals to either provide a service, share a product, whatever it may be. And, the culmination of these 30 plus years, almost 40 years of being a communicator, a legislator, thought partner, give people counsel, the strategist in me comes out. Again, I'm not the detail person. I'm like, this is where I can see you could go. What do we need to do to convene the resources, the connections, the right direction to take you into that opportunity? And always looking for the serendipity, the thing that you didn't expect that was going to provide you the support that you could make something happen.
Well, that's interesting. I often tell people, look, just take the journey and keep your eyes open.
Totally.
The big idea will unveil itself to you if you're looking. And then when you get the nudge, take it. Just do it. Is there any political future, or are you, for you?
I appreciated the time that I served in the House. It's a part of my journey that I met so many amazing people and felt like I tried to do the level best that I could in supporting the community and my constituents and others. I like to see other people step into roles. I'm very much of a believer of a leader knows when to step aside and let somebody else take the reins or pass the baton. Because I'm looking for that other piece of serendipity that's there for me.
Right.
And if you stay too stuck in one niche, then I'm not following my own advice of exploring and seeing what's out there.
I would tell you this, and certainly not to challenge, but oftentimes we don't realize what we gather along that journey in the way of skills and, more importantly, knowledge. And knowledge is powerful if it's organized and used for the betterment of everybody involved. And we're lacking knowledge in our leaders today. And I encourage folks that have gained it, and they get near the end of their career is the beginning of their career in serving others, because that common sense knowledge is not so common anymore. So while I understand whatever you do is going to be glorious.
Yep.
And
Not so interested in the political world anymore. I feel like I've had my turn at it. And again, I want others to step into it. But there are other things, definitely other things.
I look forward to seeing exactly what that is. Now, as a gift for being on our program, I have a copy of my new book, Live Ready, Beyond Think and Grow Rich. And I want to thank you.
Thank you
for being on our program today.
David, thank you so much. Always great to visit with you.